Forte Catholic. I am your host, Taylor Stroll, and my voice is a little tired today. I'm not sure if you can tell that. You know who looks tired, both physically, mentally, and spiritually? Father Anthony Sciarappa.
Hey, I'm actually doing okay spiritually, but mentally, physically, yeah, a little sleepy. It's my day off. I spent last night watching a wrestling pay-per-view, and so I'm a little sleepy this morning from all the action. But yeah.
So, watching other people do athletic things tired you out?
Exhausting, man. Exhausting.
It's funny because I always make fun of how you look, but every time it's one of those things like, you know how there's that thing like whenever you're making fun of somebody will say, "Hey, buddy, look in the mirror," right? Yeah. Well, we're on Zoom, and if you're not watching this on YouTube, you can't see this, but on the video, you're next to me, and I'm right in front of me as well. So on my screen, I see both of us. Yeah. And boy, do my eyes look tired. Like, I think I have like 14 bags under each eye. I'm exhausted.
See, stuff like that I don't notice. To me, you always look the same.
I always look this tired.
Just pretty much. I mean, yeah.
You know what? You're probably right. My life is exhausting. But here's something. I'm going to start the show off by being nice to you, and that should terrify you.
It does. I'm already uncomfortable.
So there have been some of these things called haters on the internet here today.
Oh, okay.
They deserve about 60 seconds and nothing more.
Okay.
Two people that it doesn't matter who they are. We're not giving them any publicity. One person was like, you should never go to diocesan seminaries, which is dumb because you're supposed to be a good Catholic and you're saying priests shouldn't be in dioceses. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
It's very
dumb. Other person was like, something that you and I have talked about relatively often. It's like, I like you because you're like my first priest that is a friend. Like, you are a human person, and I enjoy hanging out with you most of the time. Yeah. And I haven't been able to say that about many other priests before. But this guy tweeted out, and he was like, all priests should be serious. You shouldn't be goofy or have fun or smile or play video games or enjoy life because that's going to inspire vocations. But that's what he said, right? And all of this stuff is happening. And it involves you only in one way. I'm in a dad's DM. Mm-hmm. And so like anything said in the dad's DM needs to be kept quiet unless I break a rule. So I'm going to break a rule for a good reason though. Because one of the people, I won't tell you who it is, but one of the people, there was a conversation about these people being mean about priests, right? And this is what this person said. Father Anthony is a very funny, goofy guy who would walk through gunfire to hear a confession. And I was
hey, that makes me feel very nice.
It's so kind. It's so kind. And I was like, it was one of those weird things. Like here we are, just like there's something frustrating, and then we're kind of like me and these other guys are just kind of goofing on it. And then like I almost had a tear drop down my eye because I'm like, that's my friend they're talking about.
Yeah, that's nice.
That's very nice.
You know, it's one of these things that people don't understand what the in persona Christi means, and given it's a difficult sort of thing, but if Jesus is the perfect human being, which I think we can agree, the perfect human being, God and man, his personality is going to be so dynamic that no other one person can imitate it perfectly. And I think that's the beauty of the rest of creation. And I think this goes for all the baptized, but in particular way for priests, that different priests are going to emphasize or exemplify different aspects of the personality of God. And so some intellectual, some for humor, some for a mix, some for all these other things, passion, different ways of relating to people. And so, yeah, it's good that a priest is himself, because only when you're fully yourself can you be like Christ. And yeah, there's some like incidental things that, I enjoy video games and professional wrestling. That isn't necessarily Christ-like, but it's not necessarily not Christ-like. It's just not a big deal. It's just a part of the personality, and that's fine. So if some dweeb on the internet doesn't like that, it's just sad for them. It's sad for them that they don't understand what the human person really is, and whatever.
Anyway, all that stuff is stupid, and I just block and mute all of those things.
There you go. You had to get out of your system, though, so I respect that.
But it was all brought up to bring up the very nice thing about you, and like I said, you should be terrified because now we're going to turn the page. Okay?
Of course.
Here's us turning the page. I called you about this one, but we need to address it here.
Okay.
I've been binge watching or binge listening to Clerically Speaking, and then you've been on the show, a couple times, once a month for, forever. But for the last few months, I started to notice this thing that you've been doing. And here's where I'm going to agree with this young man that hates the priesthood. Are you ready?
Yeah, okay.
There is one thing that priests should not be doing.
Which is what?
And that's because no one above the age of 14 should be doing it. You have been responding to everything. With me, you've done it. With Father Harrison on Clerically Speaking, like just in your regular life. Like if somebody says something that you agree with, you've been saying ye as your like form of yes or agreement. And boy, I want social distancing to be over just so I can slap you in the face. That's all I want.
It's something I either came across or saw once, and it just I found it very funny, so I do it just to entertain myself. I don't think, though that being said, I'm not sure now that you mentioned it, I don't think I've used this in a homily or a professional setting yet.
Oh my gosh.
But I haven't been like
your eternal priesthood
count.
would end. Like I know priesthood lasts forever. You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek, unless you say ye in a homily, and then it's over.
Yeah, I don't think that's happened yet. I haven't been preaching as much. Nor, like, I don't think anyone in pastoral council has brought up, hey, how about we do this for catechesis? I don't think I've responded ye yet. But it's very possible, and nobody would be shocked because people pretty much know who I am and know.
Oh, I know you very well, and I was shocked because I, like most people, I've worked in youth ministry for years, and that's the only people that I hear. Like, I tell them not to say it because I tell them it sounds stupid, but I understand, young people and old people talk differently. Fine, if they're going to say it. It's just, we're just having fun. I'm not actually telling them not to say it. You're not a 14-year-old boy.
Well, here's the thing. Here's
learning how to play basketball. Like, go away.
Well, here's the thing. So, I am 31 years old, which to a high school person is a million years old, right? And I am involved in youth ministry, and I do, minister to these young people, and I find them hilarious. I find their humor hilarious. They're just ridiculous little people trying to become real people, and it's beautiful and amazing. And a lot of the goofy stuff they do, I just think is funny. But now I'm at this stage in my life where I can't be cool. I can't be young and cool, and I'm okay with that. But what I can do and what I'm leaning into is, like, I can make the things that you like cringy. So maybe that's part of it as well, and I enjoy that as well. It's also entertaining for me. So if they think something is cool and I start saying it, and even if it's funny because sometimes I'll say things that they say, I'll say like ironically, like I know I'm an old person, but I'm saying this to mess with you, but they think I'm being serious and they actually like respect me less for it. It's a fascinating dynamic.
Yeah, for real. I love working with kids. They're the best.
Yeah.
Okay. So shifting gears again, we got through. We're now even again. The balance of power is now back in force. We've got the good, we've got the evil, and we got it all taken care of.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Perfectly balanced. So you celebrated your feast day here recently.
Yeah, St. Anthony of Padua.
St. Anthony of Padua. And we addressed like all the crazy stuff going on in the world. I addressed it with our good friend John Blevins 2 episodes ago, and I don't want to keep bringing it back up because like it's just weird for me to bring it up. I shared it all there. If you want to go listen to it, it's 2 episodes ago. But I saw this today, and I thought it was funny. And like, it's hard to bring humor into what's going on in our world right now. But here it is. It was a priest who I'm sure the guy we said earlier is going to hate now. But he says, "Dear St. Anthony," who's your patron.
Yeah. "Please
help America find its sanity. It's been lost. Thanks." And then there's a return letter, and it says, "Dear Father, I have forwarded your letter to St. Jude," the patron saint of lost causes.
That's good. That's good, yeah.
For those that don't know, you help people find things, and St. Jude is a patron of lost causes. So yeah, I thought that was hilarious.
That's
and so how was your feast day there at the end of the day, buddy?
It was good. I totally forgot about it. So the priests, and religious and deacons to a certain extent, they pray the Liturgy of the Hours. And the Liturgy of Hours is like this, daily 5 basic different kinds of prayer a day, praying the Psalms. But for feast days, there's usually special prayers and stuff. Now, I've begun to say my holy hour in the morning, and that's when I do my morning prayer and stuff. And I didn't check any calendars or anything. So I accidentally skipped the prayers for my feast day and just did it for an ordinary day. And then I saw on the internet someone saying, it's St. Anthony's feast day. I was like, oh no, I'm a terrible, not patron. What's the patron's relation to the person?
Master. I don't know.
I don't know, but I'm a bad person. I'm basically, let's just say that. I'm a bad person, right? That covers it. So I was like, sorry, buddy. I think you're great. Thanks for having a cool name and helping me out with things. Because I actually do have a bit of a devotion to St. Anthony because of his preaching skills. That's something I really want to be good at for the sake of, God and for his people. So it was nice. There's a nice little statue of St. Anthony in one of my churches. And I just took a walk by it and just said some prayers to Anthony, and it was nice.
Well, I'll pray to St. Jude that St. Anthony helps you out with your preaching.
Amen.
So.
Thank you.
So what's interesting is I found that to be like a light in the darkness, right? And I like that's been kind of a key theme for me over these last couple of weeks. I was listening to this worship song that was essentially talking about this. Let me pull it up. I lost it. It said,
I'm just shocked you're not just singing it.
where'd it go? Oh, here it is. Song lyric by Gene Moore. I will keep my mind on what you are able to do. In the darkness, I will declare there's nothing too hard for you. Right. And I think that's been like, so hope is a thing that I've often struggled with. Like that's one of the things that like everything's just bad. Like that's just like and it's interesting because like I think one of my gifts is like being able to find joy in the moment. Like even in the midst of dark things, like that's not a thing that's typically hard for me. But thinking it's going to get better, it's weird that is, you know what I mean? Like I think I will be fine now. I'm fine now, so I know that I'll be fine later, but I don't know if I'll be good. You know, like, and that's kind of where I struggle with hope. So would you like to test out your St. Anthony preaching on the topic of hope?
Yeah. So the one thing that's difficult about hope is it's not something that you can't see the future. You can't see how God is going to make a thing better. What you have is faith that you know that God has revealed that Christ has conquered everything and that our destiny is to be happy with him in heaven, to have our resurrected bodies and all of that good stuff. So it's a reminder that ultimately God is in control and we can have hope in the future, even though we don't know exactly how that's going to happen. So remembering that, God is still God. And it is God's MO to do the most impressive things he does in the midst of darkness, right? So it's like when things look like they're worse, God is working the hardest, if you will. For example, the cross, that's when we were being saved. And it didn't look very hopeful. So it's having that in mind of the future that we can count on. It helps us get through the moment. So a prayer we can say something like, Lord, I don't know how this is going to be all better. I don't know how you're going to sustain me, but I know you are. So I place my faith in that because I have hope in you. And you just have to, sometimes that will feel mechanical, you know, it'll feel like you're like untrue to you because we are used to things like being, you know, sad about stuff and pessimistic about the world. But even by making that prayer, we're beginning to form our hearts in the hope that God has given us. And here's the thing, like, for despair, for cynicism, for being negative, it's kind of our way of dealing with things. So if I can't fix the world, at least I know it's bad. It's like a weird form of control. And we kind of comfort ourselves with something that's not good. Like we have a better way of coping with this. So you got to let go of that cynicism that gives you a feeling of control and be like, actually, God's in control and things are going to be okay. Even if they're going to be hard and painful, they're going to be good.
I've got a song for you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hey, you said yeah. I'm so proud of you. So God is in control is a thing that gets tweeted a lot and people will argue about it on Twitter. And it's kind of this whole thing. Like people just tweet all the time. I see it at least 20 times a day. God is in control. Mm-hmm. And do you remember the WWJD movement? Like the
bracelets. What would Jesus do? Yeah, sure.
Jesus do, right? There was an album around the WWJ movement called WWJD, and it was people like Jars of Clay and like the people that were popular, like the DC Talk was on there, right? Every time somebody tweets this song, and if tweets God is in control, and I want, if anybody listening to this has ever heard this song one time, I want you to reach out to me because I think I might be the only person in the world that literally every time I see somebody share God is in control, I think of this cheesy early 90s Christian song from the WWJD album. God is in control. We believe that his people will not be forsaken. Oh, God is in control. There's more words, but it was 28 years ago. So what do you want from me? But, that's what I think of. And I can think of no better way to end this segment than me singing a song that literally no one has ever heard. And we have a surprise guest today. Whenever we come back, we're going to have a very special guest. Usually I say at the beginning of the show, we have a perfect way to introduce this person. So please don't go anywhere because it's going to be a very, very special experience. We'll be right back.
It is.
Well, dang it, friends. I forgot to record commercials with Father Anthony. But who needs them anyway? I'm going to do them all by myself. We're about to hit a couple of milestones over on the social media, and I would love to have you just join us for the rest of the week. You know, the show comes out once a week, but all throughout the week, I live on social media and this room. But those are the two places that I live. So on Instagram over at Taylor Schroll, SCHROLL. We're about to hit 5,000 followers over there. That's very exciting. You can be one of those few people. Over on Twitter, we've got at Taylor Schroll and at Forte Catholic. And over on Facebook, the Forte Catholic account is about to hit 1,000 followers as well. So if you are not connected with us yet, you can come see the whole rest of my life and not just this craziness I do while locked in this room. Enjoy the rest of the show. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I told Father Anthony to smile, and he looks as crazy as ever. So, Father Anthony, you're on this other podcast. Well, you're on many other podcasts, but the other main one. So, your second tier one. Obviously, this is first, and then your next best podcast, Clerically Speaking. I go through binge listens with it. It's one of there's only like 3 podcasts that I binge listen to. I have like 20 podcasts I listen to all the time, but for some reason with y'all's show, I have to binge listen to it. And one of the things that I enjoy the most about listening to y'all's show is that all I want to do is like yell and be a part of the conversation. Mostly it's when you say dumb things.
Yeah.
So I decided, you know what? Instead of me just calling you after I listen to an episode of Clerically Speaking.
Or texting me or tweeting at me.
Tweeting at you. Yeah, I said, let's just do it here. We're going to do an episode, little segment of Clerically Speaking with Father Harrison Ayre, who is here. Father Harrison, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Friend. The moment has arrived.
It has.
Father Harrison is finally on Forte Catholic.
Yeah, we did it. And
we did it.
Here's what's funny is, long story short with the two of you. So y'all started... I'm loyal to a fault, and this is why it took me so long to get you onto the show, because y'all's relationship started with you two fighting on Twitter, and that's when I got to know the two of you, and I absolutely picked a side. I absolutely picked a side. I went with the American, I went with the dumb one, I went with Father Anthony, because Father Harrison is Canadian and his brain is intimidating. So I went with Father Anthony. And then y'all decided to become friends, and you changed your Twitter name, Father Harrison, and then everything changed, and I was like, you know what? I'm still team Father Anthony. Like, I would listen to the first few episodes of Clerically Speaking, and I was like, here's my friend and this other guy. So it took me a long time to come around to you, and then we got to meet at SLS, and I shared with you. So you actually have been on the show before, just very briefly. We did the live episode.
That's right.
It was right around the time that I was going to invite you on the show, but you were there, and I was like, well, it's weird. You just had him on. We'll wait a few more months. But we had you on, and I shared a little bit of this, how I was like, you know, like when I first learned about you, I was like, I don't know, he's all right. And then just over the last 2.5 years, you've grown a ton, I've grown a little, and here we are. We find ourselves together at last.
It's good to be here. It was a lot of fun hanging out at SLS with you and all the other guys too. It was a good time. It was so much fun. It was just, you know, when you go to conferences like that, I don't even care about the talks anymore. I go for the hanging out and chilling part of it, and it's great. And it was great. It was fun having drinks late at night, just talking and hanging out. It was a lot of fun.
Wow. I never realized. Did you talk with your hands before Clerically Speaking, or has Father Anthony rubbed off on you? I've never seen you talk, and you talk with your hands all the time.
Oh, yeah. I always talk with my hands. My parishioners give me a very hard time about this, that you make too many gestures when you're preaching and stuff like this. So I'm like, I can't help it. It's just the hands are half of me is French Canadian, which is like tier 2 Italian. So the hand gestures is everything. If you ever see a French Canadian talk, you will see they'll give Italians a run for their money.
Wow.
So if Father Anthony is tier 1 as an Italian,
obviously.
You're tier 2 as a French Canadian. I'm Cajun, which is displaced French Canadians. Mm-hmm. So I'm tier 3. Like it's settled.
I would even upgrade you. I'd say like tier 2A.
2A. Okay.
2A.
Very good. I will accept that, since we're all being kind to each other. It's very strange, all of us being nice to each other. So I have to switch it up. So you just talked about your preaching. We have a topic, and we'll get into it. But first, I call and yell at Father Anthony all the time for the stuff that he says on the podcast. And there was one thing that you said, I think it was the last one or maybe the second to last one. Again, I binged them, so they all run together for me. And you said something that I think might be the most elitist priest thing that you've ever said.
Yeah.
And it came from a good place. You
Right.
said, I think our preaching needs to be worse or something like that. Like, because the
Oh,
focus
yeah,
was
yeah.
like, it's not how you worded it, but that's what I heard, right? Where you were like, people's focus has become so much on the homily and not the sacrifice of the mass. And you made some good points. But
Right.
here's my one thing that I want to pick a nit with you, okay?
All right.
So I've heard you preach and I've heard Father Anthony preach. Y'all keep doing your thing, right? If y'all were a little bit worse, it would be okay. Most of the homilies I hear couldn't be any worse. So that's where I want to poke back. I said I think we need to get to a good place of preaching across the church, and then we can think about pulling it down a little bit.
No, totally. It's how do I put it? It's one of those things where it's just like if it'll just come for the homily, then like there's something wrong there. However, good preaching should deepen people's appreciation for the sacrifice of the mass, right? That's kind of the core of it. Like my homily this weekend was all about, you don't come here for your musical taste, you don't come here for the homily, you come here to be lifted up into Jesus's worship of the Father.
And ironically enough, I think as a person who has been a product of many a bad preaching, I have learned very much so that it's just about the sacrifice of the mass, because I definitely don't show up for the music or the preaching. So,
right.
Yeah.
Duet's an interesting thing, actually. St. John Henry Newman, one of the most famous preachers of the church. When he was an Anglican, people would travel from all over England to go to Oxford to listen to preach in Littlemore. When he became Catholic, he purposely became a worse preacher because he realized that the people couldn't handle a 45-minute sermon, that they couldn't handle the subtleties of thought that he was putting through, and that they didn't care. And so he just kind of like, he would preach like little 10-minute vignettes, and that was his preaching. And I'm just thinking, this is like, first, talk about humility. I could never do that, but but at the same time, it's like I find that such a fascinating story, and it just shows you the culture of preaching in the Catholic Church and how it can be kind of downplayed a lot. Because I agree, you're right. A lot of people have to put up with. We've talked about bad preaching on the podcast, right? You know, what's the blank in your life, and that's just lazy metaphorizing, right? So.
Yeah, I felt called out by that one for sure.
Taylor's scribbling down notes, rewriting all of his talks.
Exactly.
Like, oh, no.
I gotta delete that line real quick. Because Father Harrison, I think my favorite thing so far of you being on the show is all the time Father Anthony moves to his mic to say something, and one of us just talk over him. So, Father Anthony, would you like to respond to anything that's been said?
Yeah, I was going to say, but it's a tricky thing, because as you get good at preaching, usually you also get good at speaking. And there's a temptation that, you know, people can be satisfied by a good speaker, and that good speaker not necessarily be a good preacher. So they go away with a good feeling, and they like you, but they didn't go away with Jesus Christ. They weren't prepared for the liturgy of the Eucharist. And that's something you have to watch out for, because it feels really good to be liked. It feels really good when people say, that was a nice homily, or I love your preaching, or something like that. So you have to be really careful to make sure you stay a good preacher and not just a good speaker.
ForteCatholic.com/speaking. Okay, let's move on. So we do this like once a year, maybe twice a year. The show's all about the joy of the gospel and having some fun and kind of being
So then why do you have Father Anthony on the podcast?
Because
I'm so much fun.
He's lighthearted and fun, and not what I'm about to say. So once or twice a year, we do this thing, and like the whole Make Catholicism Fun Again thing, like we changed the hashtag to Make Catholicism Smart Again. Just once a year. And obviously we can't do that when it's just Father Anthony. But you're here, and you'd like to talk. I mean, you've been talking on Clerically Speaking about the human person. You've been studying the human person. I've been learning a lot about it from you, and then every other episode when Father Anthony leads, it's like, okay. But we did want to talk about the human person and some of the things that you've been learning in your studies. And specifically within the intellectual life. So you have the floor, sir.
All right. So no, I just, I think it is not a secret that the questions around human identity are, and what does it mean to be a person? What does it mean to be male and female? What is the nature of marriage? What is the nature of sexuality? All of these things are hot bubble topics today, right? They are things that are always on people's minds. And the church has a very, like, I would say actually a very beautiful teaching on this, and a very profound reflection on what does it mean to be human, that I personally believe, and this is kind of why, when my bishop said, hey, you want to do a doctorate, I said, yeah, let me do what we call theological anthropology. So that's a fancy way of talking about theology of the human person, right? And I said, and the reason is this: it is perhaps the most quote unquote applicable theology today, because we all know people who are struggling with same-sex attraction, who are struggling with different sexual addictions, whose marriages sometimes are falling apart, and they wonder, and they're so inundated by a certain kind of ideology about what does it mean to be human, that they don't know how to make their way through the world with that. The church's teaching is so countercultural in this regard and so few people in the church, I think, unfortunately, live this authentically, that you feel very isolated in the world. And so the world really can kind of undermine our Christian discipleship and make us question, is this worth it? Because you get just inundated with it you get inundated with ideology so often, just even through simple things like advertising. Or like I'll give you an experiential example actually of this. Like, I remember watching, I was on a plane flight on Air Canada. They have their little video at the beginning that shows like the safety features and everything. And there's two guys who are walking into the plane to sit down in their seats next to each other. And I hate to say this, but like the first thought that comes to my mind is, oh, this is a gay couple, right? That our minds even go that way right away shows you how we've been formed in a very different way than what the church teaches. And I think, unfortunately, the church has just done like a really lousy job of getting that message out there. And so that's kind of like, I said to my bishop, like, I want to study this because I think there's something very powerful and true in what the church teaches about who we are as male and female. What does it mean to be human? What is the nature and purpose of marriage? What is the nature and purpose of celibacy? And so on and so forth. As authentic expressions like that, the church really tells us it knows to the core what it means to be human. And that if we actually attempt to live it, we don't see this in the end as a burden, but we see it as a freeing thing. But we need to also then not just teach it, we need to work better at forming communities where this is lived, or at least being attempted authentically, right?
Yeah, and I think the temptation when we start talking about this is to go right to the moral issues, to go right to, okay, what's the deal with gay marriage? What's this? But what we've been talking about is the answer to this starts much earlier on. Like, what is the human person? So what is that? What's like the foundation of what makes us human that opens up the rest of these answers?
Yeah. So like, I mean, if you look at it this way, right? If God created us, if God is real, this is always the first question. I always have like a little kind of like a little tree chart in my head about how to ask people some questions, kind of determine where they are. First,
the answer is yes, right? To that first one?
Sure.
Yeah.
See, you could be smart too.
But yeah, is God real? Yes or no? And interestingly, I think most people would say yes still. Hardcore atheism is still it's very loud, but it's a very strong, it's just a very loud, but it's quite a small minority of opinions. Most people actually believe God exists. Okay. The next question that comes then is, did God create the universe? Yes or no? And I think
go with yes on that one. Yeah.
Good. You've passed catechism, right? But and I'd say most people, this is where things start to break down a little bit already here, though, because some people will say, well, maybe he's like, they'll see God as this kind of what we call like deistic figure, which he kind of like hits the start button, but then walks away and is not actually involved in the creation, right? So when we say, do we believe that God created the universe, not just did he start it, but has he been actively involved in upholding it in its formation? And I mean, I would argue from even just a philosophical perspective, the theistic view is the only one that makes sense, because God is literally upholding creation in every moment. The second that he says, no, I'm not going to uphold it anymore, we cease to be. being is upheld by God. So did God create? Yes or no? So then, but this is where it comes interesting. If God created us, I mean, this is the simple logic of it all. If God created us, then he knows we can look to him to find out what it means to be human. And not just, and then there's other questions that follow from this. Okay, if God exists, God created us, did God reveal himself? And how has he revealed himself, right? But so then in the Christian tradition, we'd say, yes, God is, God created, God continues to create, and God revealed himself. And by revealing himself, he also revealed humanity, right? It's, I mean, I think one of the best theological encapsulations of this is from actually Gaudium et Spes, one of the Second Vatican Council documents, whereby this is actually the paragraph that John Paul II wrote, which is really just awesome. He says, he's reflecting on John 17, where Jesus prays, Father, may they be one as we are one. And he says that, it says that in this moment, Jesus opens up vistas that were previously hidden to human reason. What's that vista? God is a unity in diversity, 1 and 3. So that's something revealed. That's something new we did not know about God. And then he says that he kind of uses this as the starting off point to that great and famous phrase of his, that man cannot find himself except through a sincere gift of self. This is how the Trinity is. And we have been made in God's image and likeness. And so we look to Revelation, especially to the cross, and we see actually not just God being revealed, but also humanity being revealed, because we're fallen creatures, right? I know Father Anthony's a sinner.
Obviously.
I'm pretty sure Taylor's a sinner. I'm a sinner. I'm a sinner, right? We're all sinners. So, our eyes get muddied. Our eyes can't see things clearly. We need revelation to give us a clear vision of who God is and who we are. And so one of the great movements of the 20th century in Catholic theology has been to develop and to explore the robust depths of what does it mean to be human by giving what you call like a kind of like a theological analysis of revelation. And one of the great examples of this is obviously John Paul II's theology of the body, theology of the human person, whereby he looks at the scriptures to tell us this is what God has revealed to us. And it's immensely beautiful. And I'm not saying like every Catholic needs to know the intricacies of his theology of the body, but the whole point of like theology in and of itself is that it's meant to kind of dissipate into practice in the life of the church. And so it can form, for example, as a pastor, that's something that I should at least know at least a basic amount of, so that it can help me form communities to help them live this, to see the freedom in it, so that others can see it and say, I want what they have.
Right.
Yeah, and you mentioned right in there the kind of like the nugget, the key, the core of what the theology of the human person is that the human being is a gift. So that God doesn't make us because he needs lots of worship. As we said in one of our episodes, God isn't Fabio who needs all these compliments and stuff. God creates just because he wants to share his love with others, and he wants us to share our love with him and with others. Yeah. And that's such a radically different idea, because there's other ideas, even if people think it consciously, they think I'm just thrown out into the world and it's chaotic and it doesn't mean anything. I didn't choose to be born. Here I am thrown out into the world. But no, the Christian says, no, you were gifted into the world. You are a part of God's plan, his mind, his love. And your whole reason for being is to share that love. And it's that little nugget that he'll open up, John Paul II will open up into, okay, how does that mean? What does that mean for us being sexual beings? What does that mean for human relationship? What does that mean for human purpose? It's all right in there. And I guess even within that thing that we were made for a gift, that's exemplified to us, revealed to us perfectly in Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. And especially in his cross, death, and resurrection. Well,
it's Philippians 2:5-11, right? Jesus, who though he was in the form of God, did not deem equality with God as something to be grasped at. So Paul is referring to the tree, right? Mm-hmm. The grasping at the fruit. Rather, he emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, being born of human likeness. And it was thus that he humbled himself, obediently accepting even death on the cross. And he goes on like that. Therefore, God highly exalted him, bestowing upon him the name that is above every the name, and yada yada yada. But we pray that every week in evening prayer, so he just gets memorized.
Yes, I have that memorized as well.
Yeah.
But I let you say it for the people.
But
to
no, like
prove that you're smarter than me, obviously.
but that's the beauty. Like that's almost like the structure that Scripture shows that we want to take. But Jesus shows no. Actually, to be human means to give. That in the measure, Jesus actually even says, the measure you give is the measure you will receive. This is not like karma, but it's rather by giving everything away, you only there can you open up a space whereby God can give himself to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
let's
right?
make this real practical for a second.
Yeah. So here's the thing, Father Harrison. I've gotten to do this to Father Anthony so many times, and I've done it to him out of spite. I'm only doing it to you out of time. We have run out of time, but I was trying to get practical as well. So like this is, I said at the beginning, the dream is to like intersperse into Clerically Speaking, but it also kind of feels like one of your homilies. It's like, okay, Father, time to wrap it up. Let's go. But so like Father Anthony, I'll let you wrap it up because we were both looking to go practical, and I had one last thing to say, but go ahead.
Okay, well, so if love or if purpose of human life is to give yourself away, look at how we look at marriage. So often the popular cultural idea of marriage is I need to find my soulmate so that I can be fulfilled.
Right.
There's a hugely different attitude when you're looking at it. I want to give myself in love to another person. And you can see how that little change in mindset can radically change how we view marriage and dating and relationships.
And I just throw in with that quickly is then and like that still kind of at least romantically exists in people's hearts.
Sure.
They may not, it gets mixed up with the mixed motives. And I mean, hey, we're sinners, we're all going to do that, right? But it's kind of still there in germ form. People, like deep down, people want to be sacrificed for. and deep down, people want to sacrifice for others. The church is there to say, that's actually implanted in you by God because you're made in his image and likeness. And it's the church's job through community, etc., through the liturgy, through her teaching, to tease that out and to pull it out.
Yeah, I love that felt like the second homily that some priest gives after the announcements. That was tremendous. Like kind of to wrap it up, like the last I think the most interesting thing that you said, Father Harrison, was something that I've forgotten. Hold on. Good thing I can edit this out. Oh man, I was gonna say something. What was it?
Well, now you see the brilliance of my part in the podcast to manage Father Harrison, to pull out the things that I think are important for the people to understand, to guide him in the right direction. It's not so easy, is it?
Oh, here we go. So I think the most interesting thing for me that you shared, Father Harrison, was that like our culture is constantly showing us things like you shared your experience on the plane. Our culture is constantly showing us things that this is what it means to be human. This is how we live our lives. And that stuff is going to happen naturally. Like just living our lives, just watching TV, walking around, like that stuff is going to happen naturally. What's not going to happen naturally, that has to be a decision, is for us to be formed intellectually in the faith through things that you mentioned, through reading, spiritual reading, which y'all talked about on Clerically Speaking recently, through listening to podcasts, through reading the scriptures, like all the things that the church has given us to form ourselves intellectually, like that we have to choose to do that so that we truly know who we are, made in God's image, not from other sources.
Exactly. I mean, there were times where the church was the heart of culture. And that's fine. That happens, and it still is in certain parts of the world today, right? And so in those places, the church kind of forms that, and so it becomes less intentional. But for us in North America, it requires a deep intentionality to say, I've made a decision for Jesus Christ and his church. Therefore, I'm going to seek the things that help me to live that. So that means, like you said, like we're going to read. Like I think in North America, catechesis, and theological, like basic introductions to theology and stuff like that, are vitally important to give us a kind of groundwork. They're not there to how do I put it, like convince us. They're there to kind of set the foundation. Is more what they're meant to do, right? And at the heart, like I actually really think that this can only be done not individually at home where I'm just going to read a book and that's it. You need the communion of the church locally, through communities, through your parish, through different groups. These are the places that's like the laboratory where we learn to be human.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks so much for coming on today and sharing. Y'all have been talking about this on Clerically Speaking the last few weeks, and I think that will still continue. So people can follow you there. They can also follow you on Twitter at FR Harrison. And guys, don't go anywhere. We will be right back. Well, not Father Harrison, just the two dummies. We'll be right back for our final segment. Don't go anywhere. All right, I'm back. I have some sad news to share with you. For the last almost 4 years the show has been going on, we have had a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. But we've had some trolls recently, and they've brought it down to a 4.5. And I don't like 4.5. It's much higher than my GPA was, but that wasn't on a 5-star scale, because it would have been much worse in that case. But anyway, here's what I need. I need you to do me a favor. I need you to go into your Apple Podcast app and search Forte Catholic. It's weird. You can't do it like if you're already listening to it. You have to search Forte Catholic, go over to it, leave a 5-star review, say something nice and kind. If you don't have anything nice and kind about me, say something nice or kind about a guest or co-host or something. It would really help. I want to get that 4.5 to go away. Please help me. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am still joined by Father Anthony Scaramucci Sciarappa. How are you doing over there, buddy?
I'm still doing great.
We're both drinking our water. We're both staying hydrated. That's very healthy. And
yes. So I'm recording in my brother's attic, and it gets warm up here. I am glistening.
Well, the roles have finally switched from whenever I was recording here with no AC, and now I feel tremendous because I paid to have AC put in here because I live here now. Well, I mean, I've always lived in my house, but I live in my new office because this is where the Forte Catholic headquarters. Everybody,
yeah, exactly.
A small room with a water heater in it. We have to start this segment the same way that we did the first segment. It's me sharing how nice you are. Are you ready?
Twice in one show?
Twice in one show.
Yeah.
So today is your day off.
It is.
Because it is Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Today is also Father Harrison's day off. So both of you were very generous in coming on the show today.
Sure.
Usually, because I only work for Forte Catholic now, my schedule's way more open. We've talked about that before. And usually I'm able to record, Tuesdays are perfectly fine. We record, I edit it all Tuesday, it all goes out Wednesday. Every now and then we have to push back to Wednesday, and then it's out late, and Sarah Huber gets mad at me. Other than that, and Caitlin too, she'll get mad at me every now and then. But she can't stay mad at me for so long because I'm amazing. But what was I saying? Oh yes, you were nice. It's so hard for me to remember what I was saying when I'm But my wife and I's 8th wedding anniversary is tomorrow.
Yay! Congratulations.
Thank you. It's congratulations that she stayed with me this long.
Yeah, it's a congratulations to you. It's like,
sure.
Okay, Sam. I mean, I guess thumbs up.
Good job. Saint in the making over there, boy. But you were so very kind. Usually it's perfectly fine. We can record on Tuesdays. You can have your day off. Fine. But I was like, I can record Tuesday because we're doing stuff in the afternoon and the evening. But it would just be, I think she'd be mad at me, to be honest, if I recorded on our anniversary. So here we are on Monday, and you're very kind, and that was your anniversary gift to us. Thank you.
Yes, and you're not getting anything else, so enjoy.
In lieu of anything else. But to go back to your sweating, because that's where we need to go.
Cool. Yeah, let's make a segment about this. Yeah.
So I've been going to the gym. I shared about this last week, but my gym has been opened after all the COVID stuff. With all the social distancing stuff, and then they started to drop them, and that's kind of frustrating, but whatever, right? I've still been going to the gym, keeping my distance. Everybody's been great. Everybody's been cleaning the stuff. Usually it was just me because I flop sweat like crazy. So I wipe off the sweat, but most people who aren't crazy human beings that don't sweat as much as I do, they're just like, I didn't sweat here. Why do I need to wash it off? Everybody's being so very kind. And when I first started going to the gym, whenever I was really busy, at the beginning of the semester, when I first started going to this gym, I was going once or twice a week, and it was hard to kind of make it a habit. Now I have no excuse. I work at home. I'm my boss. I can work whenever I want, and it's been great. I've been working at home instead of doing 8 hours in a row. I work in 2 or 3 hour stints, hang out with my family for 2 or 3 hours, do another 2 or 3 hour stint. It's my 8 to 10 hours in the day, just spread out over the day, and I love it. So I can go to the gym whenever. I have no excuse not to. Right. So I first started going to the gym. And boy, when I first started going back after the 2.5 months, I had been walking and trying to get back in shape, but lifting, I hadn't
is a whole different thing
forever. And boy, I have been sore for 2 weeks. I'm sore to the point of every day has been painful, even like my rest days. I'm just like, everything's bad, but it feels good. And like, so I've only missed 3 days in 14 days, in 2 weeks.
That's really good.
Yeah, so like 2 days of rest and 1 day where I was just like, no, I'm not going, and you can't make me. But when I first started going, like the first six out of the 7 days, boy, I was watching the clock on everything. Every time I was walking or riding the bike or just like whole workout, it's like, is my 10 minutes up on the bike? Is my 10 minutes up walking? Has it been an hour yet? Because for some arbitrary reason, I think an hour is a good amount to work out.
Yes, exactly.
And after that first week, I was sore, but I started feeling good. I was starting to feel like an athletic person again. You know, just 1% of what I used to be. Sure. And like this last week, it's been funny. I've started realizing, because I'm going closer to the closing time. Like I go like an hour and a half before it closes, and I don't look at my clock, and then all of a sudden the guy's like, "Hey, you have 10 minutes." He goes around. He's like, "Hey, everybody's got 10 minutes before we got to leave," and I'm like, I've only been doing this 2 weeks. And I went from staring at my clock at the 10-minute mark to now I'm working out like an hour and 25 minutes and have to be told to stop. Right?
Yeah.
And I had this, like, I was proud of myself. And then 3 seconds later, I fell apart as a human person. Because you know what that doesn't apply to that everyone says it should? My prayer life. Boy. What, like, how was I able to completely change my life? Like completely change my schedule, how I work out. Like working out has become a part of my daily routine. I know it. My family knows it. I go every day, except for those 3 days. Like I'm going just about every day.
Right.
And yet all the same things. I have all this time. I'm my own boss. I can do whatever I want at whatever time I want. And yet my prayer life is not good.
Yeah.
Poop.
Well, okay, so yeah, there are a lot of like similarities. Like same thing, if you get into a prayer routine, it does get easier, but it's also different. It's different because your body is going to work like a body does. Like if you start working out, you begin to see results or feel better, but prayer is a relationship and the dynamics in that are different. So depending on what's going on, like bringing like what's in your heart to Jesus is much more complicated and difficult than picking something up and putting it down, right? It requires more than just willpower.
Depends on how much weight I put on the side of that.
That's also sure. Right, but like it's easier to grasp, at least the concept of picking something up and putting it down. But like, you know, it requires more than just willpower to like take what's in your heart and really honestly give it to God. It takes more than just, willpower to like go through and those times of spiritual dryness too. And maybe God's trying to teach you something like difficult. And some days will be like, oh, wow, all these constellations, wonderful. Sometimes it won't be that. So it is like there's similarities as far as the discipline, and part of prayer is discipline. And it's something that I'm working on myself. So I'm trying to do my morning holy hour. And even though it's more of a part of my schedule now, there are still those days where I don't have a clock, but I have one of those hourglasses. I'm just like,
I heard this. Yeah. You're a crazy person and I love you.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's so cool. Someone gave it to me. Like, this is perfect. And so anyway, there's some days I'm not looking at the tabernacle. I'm looking at the hourglass, being like, Lord, once I clock out, like I'm a good person because I stayed here for an hour. And that's better than nothing, but it's not, really the point of prayer. So yeah, it can be more difficult to do that in prayer.
See, I like, here's where I am in my prayer life. I was like, you know what you could do? Just take off the top of that hourglass, pour a little bit of the sound out, and then you'd be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it is because like the hourglass is like, it's not perfect. I timed it one time. It's like an hour and 8 minutes. So when I start looking at it go down, I'm like, man, maybe I can count this because it's technically an hour, but I like that little extra time.
300 grains of sand. It's been an hour.
Right. But yeah. But I do think like at the very basic level, it's the same thing. Like you have to decide you're going to go to prayer at this time. Your family has to know it so they can keep you accountable. And that's how you start. And even though, like I said, those dynamics can always be shifting and changing, that habit of prayer does make prayer easier.
Yeah. So I've been told.
but I don't wanna.
I remember being in college and like I did a holy hour every day and it was so easy because it was part of, but I was like, yeah, I don't know. I was a better person.
Make Taylor Stroll a better person again. That's what we got.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I don't know. I was pretty convicted on it, and I think that is the best snapshot into like my internal monologue ever. Like my great victory just completely destroyed 3 seconds later. Like I was like, now every time I go to the gym, I'm like, I'm a bad person.
Why aren't you praying right now, Taylor?
Right, exactly. Put more weight on to make yourself happy. Yeah, so I think that's my challenge. It was just like yesterday that I thought of that. So I need to fix it. All right. Speaking of things I think it's funny that you're like, your family should keep you accountable on your prayer. Like my 7, 5, and 2.5-year-old are going to do anything about that.
Well, I was thinking mostly your wife.
Right, right. But it's funny because that sounds ridiculous. But in another sense, my son has been holding me accountable like crazy the last week. Are you ready for this?
Okay.
We had a really good day. I forget how many days it's been, and I'm going to get some of the facts, like the placements wrong. But these are all the things that happened over like the last 4 days, right? We had this one day where we beat a video game together that we've been playing for months. He caught a legendary Pokemon he had never gotten before that I took him on a Pokewalk for. I traded him another legendary Pokemon, and it became like, people that don't know, just know like the rarest type of Pokemon. I traded it to him, and it became that. So like we had this day that was just tremendous as father and son. And the next day he came to me and be like, yesterday was a great day. Are we going to have another great day today? I'm like, well, crap, like,
like, whoa, 2 days in a row. Settle down there, boy.
So we go out. I trade him another legendary that he hadn't had. We go out. We get him a new legendary. I show him a new game that because we beat the first one, and we had a just great time with the new game. And he's like, man, we had 2 great days. I'm like, phew, I did it. Like, and then yesterday we go out again. And this will be very happy because of one of the other 1,000 podcasts you're on. We go to Wendy's.
Yay!
And he had already eaten lunch. I hadn't, so I got my chicken sandwich, and we both got Frosties. He had never had a Frosty before.
Wow!
So
this is a big moment in a young man's life.
Huge moment. So he loved it. You asked as the Wendy's aficionado what he thought, and he compared it to Dairy Queen and said he likes banana splits better. I'm like, that's a great way to say thank you to your father. But I can't tell you how much pressure I have on what today's going to look like, because it's Monday. It's a work day, and we have we're going to try. Like, there's one thing I can try, but even if the one thing we have planned goes well today, we're just going to catch one legendary Pokemon, and I think he's going to be disappointed. Oh, we also saw like his first deer and his first rabbit. Like I don't know how I'm going to top this. How do I keep this up? There's so much pressure on me right now.
That's tough. That's a tough lesson to learn, that sometimes days are just okay. And then you get older and you realize that most days are kind of bad. And so that's all a part of growing up too. So
right. and I think like that was the thing that I was like, it made me feel better about my prayer life situation.
Yeah.
Because I was like, there are days where it's like, oh man, I outdid myself in prayer from the day before, and I outdid myself the day before. And then there are days like today with my son. It's just like, son, today's going to be a normal Monday. Today is when you learn what Mondays are like, and like, and like, it's weird because like, I don't feel bad about it.
No.
And like, but like whenever I get in that scenario with prayer, I feel terrible. And I think that's the lesson that I'm trying to learn here, is that like, we can still have a good day, even though it's like, today is not going to be anywhere near as cool as this weekend. Every day this weekend was with my son. Yeah. And like, yesterday's prayer was almost non-existent and worse than the few days before, and I felt terrible about it. It's like, I just need to stop and just start again. Like, stop thinking that way and just start again. Any advice you have to close out the show today for me, because I'm in this weird place.
Well, yeah. I mean, take a step back. Those things you're doing with your son, it's because you love your son. Like, Pokemon's fun and everything, but like the experience, and when your son looks back, he's not going to think so much about the legendaries, but just the times with his father. And sometimes that has to be how we approach prayer too. Prayer isn't about winning or losing. It's about being with your Heavenly Father. So once we take that pressure off prayer, it's like, I don't have to win anything. I don't have to get points. I just have to be with my Father. And sometimes it's just going to be okay. But when you look back at all those times spread out, like, oh yeah, these were the best parts of my life when I was with my Heavenly Father, or the same sort of way with when I was with my family.
I finally understand why prayer's so hard for me, because it's not about winning and losing, and all I want to do in life is win.
Yeah.
I don't think you realize how big of a revelation that was for me. So that closes out our show today. Father Anthony, thanks for hanging out today. Guys, I will be back next week. Say it! Thank you guys for listening to today's show. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you haven't been listening over the last few weeks, one of the themes has been me sharing about how I now work for Forte Catholic full-time. ForteCatholic.com, as you can see all the stuff that we are doing there other than just the show. But what's really been cool is to see how many people have been generous in supporting this mission. We are now a nonprofit 501c3, so any donation is tax deductible. And this is how we run everything at Forte Catholic. It's how I feed my family. So I would desperately, I'm coming off as desperate. I would love to have your support. It would be absolutely tremendous. ForteCatholic.com/donate is the way that you can do that. If you'd rather do it on Patreon, you can support over on patreon.com/ForteCatholic. Or you can buy some merch, ForteCatholic.com/store. That's all the shilling. Goodbye.